I was 6 years into the force when it happened, still green enough to believe I had answers, but seasoned enough to feel when something was wrong, even if I couldn't explain why. This was about 12 years ago, in a rural town tucked between thick pine forests and a decommissioned rail line that ran east into nowhere. The kind of place where people wave at you from their porches, and the town diner still sells coffee for under $1 if they like your badge. It was late October, a Tuesday, I think. The air had that coppery bite it gets before frost, and the fog was thicker than usual, thick enough that my headlights felt useless. I remember the way the mist seemed to roll instead of hang, like it had weight, like it was alive. I was doing my usual solo patrol of the old rail corridor just outside town, a long, cracked access road that parallels the abandoned line. Locals used to say the trains still ran out there, even though nothing official had moved on those tracks since '97. I was about to loop back toward the station when I saw him, a boy, maybe 9 or 10, standing completely still just off the gravel road right by the tracks. He was barefoot, no jacket, just a white shirt clinging to his arms, even though it was cold enough to see your breath. I stopped the cruiser, radioed it in possible lost child, male, age 10 or under location, near Sector 8 rail trail. Dispatch acknowledged and told me they'd contact his parents, but they didn't have a matching report yet. I stepped out of the car. He didn't flinch, didn't turn, just kept staring down the track like he was waiting for something. I called out, "Hey buddy, you okay?" and started walking toward him. I got maybe 5 feet from him when the fog pulled in hard and thick like a curtain. I lost sight of him for just 2, maybe 3 seconds, and when it cleared, he was gone like he was never there. I spun in a full circle, flashlight out, scanning every inch of that clearing. Nothing, no footprints in the gravel, no rustling in the brush, not even a scuff mark where he'd been standing. It was like the fog had taken him. I radioed dispatch again, asked if they'd gotten anything back about a missing kid. Still nothing. I gave a description: white male, around 10, thin build, white shirt, no shoes. They promised to follow up, but I could hear it in the dispatcher's voice. She thought I was seeing things. I didn't sleep that night. Not well, anyway. I kept replaying the image in my head. The way the boy didn't look at me, didn't move. The blank stillness of it. Kids don't stand still like that. Not in the cold, not in the woods. The next morning, I went back out there in daylight. Same spot. I found something then, not much. Just a small piece of what looked like torn cotton fabric snagged on a bush. Dirty white, maybe from a t-shirt. I bagged it, logged it, and that was it. We had nothing else to go on. 2 days passed. Everyone moved on, then we got the call. A freight worker, some old-timer who still monitored the rail line for trespassers and maintenance, called in a report. Said he found something near an old crossing about 3 miles down from where I saw the kid. It was a body, a child, male, around 10 years old. And the weirdest thing, the body wasn't fresh, the coroner said. It had been there longer than 2 days, at least a week. Dried mud in the lungs suggested drowning, but no water nearby. No signs of trauma, just ... gone. But here's what still wrecks me. I was asked to confirm the clothing, and there it was, a white cotton shirt, torn in the same place I found the fabric. Barefoot, it was the same boy. But it couldn't be. He'd been dead before I ever saw him. The department chalked it up as a tragic coincidence. Bodies move, they said. Animals drag them. water carries them. But this wasn't that. There were no signs of animal activity. No water anywhere near. And I know what I saw. He was standing. Alive, or something pretending to be alive. I stayed quiet during the official report. Gave what was required. Dates, times, clothing match, approximate location. But I never said the part about him vanishing. I never said I saw him after he was already dead. Maybe I was afraid of what they'd think. More honestly, I think I was afraid of what it meant. I tried to visit the boy's family when we identified him. They lived just outside the county line. His name was Elijah. 10 years old, went missing walking home from school. No one knew how he ended up near the tracks. It wasn't anywhere near his route. The parents didn't want to talk. I didn't push. But about a month later, I got a letter, no return address. Just a folded sheet of paper in my inbox at the station. It said, "You're not the first to see him. He waits for the train that never comes. Don't follow him if he turns next time." That was it. No signature, no explanation, no proof. I never told anyone about that letter. Never even mentioned it until now. But I started asking around. Off the record, and a retired sergeant named Colby, who worked the same stretch of road back in the late 80s, said something I'll never forget. He said, "You mean the boy in the white shirt?" Yeah, I saw him once. Thought I imagined it. He was standing real still, just like you said. Fog swallowed him before I could get close. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Some things don't die right. They linger. They echo." I've never patrolled that stretch of road again. Not since that night. And I never will. This happened in the winter of 2014. I was working nights at the time, solo patrol, mostly around the northern district of town. It was a quiet stretch with run-down duplexes, a couple liquor stores, and not much else. Winter always brought a certain stillness to the place. The snow softened the edges of things, even the crime. Calls were fewer, but when they came in, they were heavier, desperate. Cold makes people slower, but it also makes them meaner. That night, it was around 2:30 a.m. I remember because I was half an hour from clocking out. I had the heat cranked in the cruiser and some old AM talk radio murmuring in the background. The streets were empty, save for a few trash cans blown over by the wind. Then the call came through, static at first, then clear. Unit 12, respond to 514 Sanderson. Possible domestic screaming reported by neighbor. The voice was calm, warm, female. Copy, I said. En route. I recognized the voice immediately. It was dispatcher Carla, who I'd spoken to plenty over the years. She was one of the good ones, always composed, even during the worst calls. She had this steady tone, like no matter what chaos you were heading into, she was right there with you. Voice like a warm blanket. As I made my way through the snowy backstreets, Carla stayed on the line longer than usual. Gave me updates about the caller. Said she could still hear crying in the background. Told me to approach slow. Her tone dipped softer, like she was worried. She even said my name. "Be careful, Davis." That caught me off guard. Dispatch doesn't use first names over the line, not ever. And Carla, she wasn't the emotional type, but I didn't think too hard on it. I figured maybe it was a bad one. Maybe she knew something I didn't. I pulled up to the house, a single-level brick home with no lights on and the front door slightly ajar. The snow hadn't been stepped in. Approached the house with my flashlight drawn, boots crunching through untouched snow. Not a single print, Not from a suspect. Not from a neighbor. Not even mine yet. Like the house was sitting in its own untouched bubble. The front door creaked open a little more when I stepped onto the porch. No lights inside. I called out, "Police. Hello? Anyone home?" Silence. Then the faintest sound, like someone breathing inside. Slow, ragged. I pushed the door the rest of the way open and stepped in. My light cut across a small living room. The place looked lived in, but barely. No family photos, no clutter, a recliner and an ashtray. That was it. Then I heard it again, the breathing, coming from down the hallway. I radioed in, Unit 12. I'm inside the residence, investigating possible disturbance. I've got movement in the back room. Carla answered immediately. Copy that, 12. Stay on the line with me. Her voice was different, softer than usual, like she was right there next to me, whispering into my ear. I moved down the hallway, each step slower than the last. The sound was coming from behind the last door on the left. When I reached for the knob, the breathing stopped. Total silence. I counted to 3 in my head. Opened the door. The room was completely empty. Just pale walls and an old TV unplugged in the corner. No windows open. No attic access. No furniture. Nothing. I turned in a slow circle, confused, and started to back out of the room. And that's when my radio clicked on again. But it wasn't Carla's voice. It was static. Then a different voice. Male. You're not supposed to be here. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't angry. It was regretful. I froze, tried to respond. The mic wouldn't work. Nothing would. And then, from the hallway behind me, came that same breathing sound again. Except this time, it was right up against my ear. I turned fast, flashlight and sidearm drawn. But the hallway was empty. Dead still. No footprints. No heat signatures. Not even breath fog in the air. Just cold drywall and peeling baseboards. I backed out of the house fast, heart hammering in my ears. Once I was outside, my radio came alive again. Unit 12, status. It was dispatch but not Carla. It was Darren, the overnight shift guy. Grumbly voice, always eating chips on the line. I keyed the mic, shaky. Where's Carla? A pause. Who? Carla from dispatch. She sent me to this call. Longer pause this time. Davis, we don't have a Carla. What are you talking about? She's worked nights for years. No, man. You okay? We've only had 2 dispatchers on rotation all winter. Me and Lorna. I didn't answer. I just sat in the cruiser for a long time, hands freezing against the steering wheel. The house stayed dark. No one ever came out. No neighbors approached. Eventually, I called it in as a false alarm, left a card on the front porch, and drove back to the station. When I got there, I checked the call log. There was no record of a domestic call to 514 Sanderson, no timestamp, no audio file, just a blank space where that moment should have been. I even asked the station clerk if anyone named Carla had worked there in the past. He shrugged and said maybe, back in the 90s, before the system changed over. So I started digging old rosters, training manuals, personnel files, and in a dusty binder in the archives, I found her name. Carla Jensen. Hired in 1993, died in a car accident off duty in 1997. Hit a tree driving home after a double shift. Fell asleep at the wheel, they said. Guess what route she took home? Sanderson Street. I don't know what that means. I don't want to. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving those back streets, the radio clicks on by itself, and I hear her voice again. Be careful, Davis. Back when I first transferred to the Central Precinct, I was warned about Cell 6. Not officially, of course. It wasn't written in any manual or report. But the officers who'd been around long enough had this way of not talking about it, made it stand out even more. The cell was down in the basement level, past the intake rooms and the old locker hall that always smelled like wet stone. It was supposed to be temporary overflow, used for short-term detainment when the upstairs holding cells were full. But no one ever volunteered to put anyone in Cell 6. And the few times I saw it used, the officers always looked uncomfortable, like they were sending someone somewhere they didn't want to be alone. It's a small concrete room, narrow with no window. Just a bench, a rusted toilet, and a steel door with a worn number 6 etched into the metal like it had been burned in by hand. The rumor was, back in the 70s, a suspect died in there, hung himself with his own belt before he was even booked. A drunk tank situation gone wrong. No one caught it until morning. Supposedly, the cameras didn't work. That night, lights had been flickering for weeks before. All the usual horror story nonsense. I didn't think much of it, not until the night. I had no other choice. We'd picked up a guy for trespassing and aggressive threats. He was yelling at passing cars near a daycare after hours, throwing rocks at the building, totally out of it. Meth head, probably. He wasn't violent by the time I cuffed him, just ... twitchy, nervous. Kept asking if I heard the ringing. It was a busy night, every upstairs cell full, 2 other officers already, processing arrests. Only space left was the basement. I walked him down myself. He stopped just before Cell 6 and went quiet. Not that one, he said. Put me anywhere else, please. Don't put me in there. I didn't listen. God, I wish I had. The moment I shut the door behind him, something shifted. The hallway lights buzzed, then dimmed just slightly. Like the power blinked in a way the eye almost misses. I stood there for a second, waiting for it to even out. But it didn't. It stayed just a little too dark. I walked back upstairs and logged the arrest. Left the cell monitor running on my desk, just like always. Black and white feed, grainy. But clear enough. He was sitting on the bench, rocking a little, staring at the wall. No talking, no yelling. Just that weird, empty stare. About 20 minutes later, I heard a sound from the hallway. It was faint, distant, but wrong. Like whispering. Not quite words, not just noise. A kind of overlapping murmur, like a crowd whispering through a... While I stepped into the corridor, nothing. It was dead quiet. Except when I passed the stairwell leading down to the basement. Then the air changed. Heavier, like it had weight. Like the air itself was pressing against my ears. I went back to my desk, pulled up the camera again. He was standing now, in the middle of the cell, his back to the wall, staring straight into the corner, like a kid being punished. He wasn't moving, at all. Then the screen glitched, just for a second. Static and lines, like the old VHS tapes used to do. When it cleared, he was sitting again, but now on the floor, legs crossed, head tilted to one side, still staring. That's when he started to speak. I couldn't hear it. There's no audio feed down there, but I could see his mouth moving. Slowly, deliberately, like he was reciting something, but not to me, to the corner. I watched for 5 straight minutes. His eyes never blinked. His lips never stopped. And I swear to God, just for a second, there was a shadow in the corner of that cell that didn't belong to either of us. I went down there. Don't ask me why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I was trying to convince myself the feed was just buggy, some glitch, a loop, a trick of the light. I needed to see for myself. When I opened the basement door, it hit me all at once, that thick low frequency. Silence, like walking underwater. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. I remember swallowing, hard, and realizing I couldn't even hear that. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. When I reached cell 6, I looked. Through the small reinforced glass in the door, he was still sitting on the floor, mouth open, lips moving. But now, tears were running down his face, steady, slow. He wasn't sobbing, he wasn't making a sound, but the tears kept falling, like something was being peeled out of him, word by word. I opened the hatch. "Hey," I said, "you all right?" His mouth stopped. He didn't look up. Instead, in the softest, smallest voice I've ever heard, he whispered, "It says you're next." I slammed the hatch shut and stepped back. My heart was in my throat. I wanted to yell, to call someone down, to get help, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, staring at a man who now looked ... hollow, like whatever had been inside him wasn't anymore. An hour later, when we transferred him upstairs to an open cell, he didn't speak. Again, wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't look anyone in the eye. They took him to county the next day. He was deemed psychologically unfit to stand trial. Last I heard, he was still in a facility out west. No progress, total withdrawal, like something in him had unplugged after that. The department quietly shut cell 6, bolted it from the outside, filed it under equipment malfunction. But here's what haunts me. Sometimes, when I walk past that hallway, just passing by on a slow shift, I swear I still hear that whisper, just beneath the buzz of the lights, right at the edge of thought. And I walk faster, every time. I've always taken pride in my uniform, not for the ego of it, but for what it represents. Order, presence, something people recognize when things are falling apart. You show up, people expect answers. Stability, that's why this one's hard to talk about, because what I saw that night, it wasn't just strange, it undid something in me. Like seeing yourself in a mirror that moves when you don't. It started on a slow Thursday shift last spring. Late March, just after the snow had melted, but before the ground had dried. The kind of damp that seeps into your bones, no matter how many layers you're wearing. I was assigned to patrol Route 11, the stretch of rural road that cuts behind the old lumber mill and winds toward the forest line. It's mostly farmland out there now, a few trailers, long abandoned sheds, no streetlights, no real traffic past sundown. Most nights, it's dead quiet. I remember the air felt ... off, not cold, not warm, just stale, like nothing had moved in. Hours, I kept the windows cracked anyway, out of habit, around 1:15 a.m. I saw something ahead, a person walking along the shoulder, maybe 20 yards in front of me. At first I assumed it was another officer. The figure was wearing a uniform, dark navy, same cut, same reflective patches, the outline of a duty belt, even the angle of the radio. I slowed down to make sure they were okay. Thought maybe a vehicle had broken down nearby, and they were. On foot, but as I got closer, something didn't sit right. They weren't moving like an officer. No hand on the radio, no flashlight. Their gait was ... floaty, like their feet barely touched the ground, and the way they held their head tilted slightly, like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. Then the cruiser's headlights swept over their back, and I saw the badge number. It was mine. I slammed on the brakes, heart punching. Through my chest, hands shaking. I stared through the windshield, but the figure just kept walking, slow, steady, into the bend where the woods begin. There was no doubt I'd seen my badge number, my exact uniform, even the worn spot on the left shoulder where my old body cam had scuffed the fabric. It was me. I stepped out of the cruiser, didn't even think about protocol. I just followed. The trees swallowed him quick. He didn't look back, didn't pause, just kept walking deeper into the woods like he knew exactly where he was going. Called out, "Hey, stop, identify yourself." No reaction. I quickened my pace. The ground was soft with meltwater, making every step loud and sloppy, but he moved like he weighed nothing, didn't leave a trail, didn't make a sound. Then he turned, and I saw his face. It was my face. Same jawline, same scar under the chin from that bar fight in college. But his eyes, they weren't mine. They were darker, not in color, in depth, like looking down. A well where the bottom moves. He smiled, not wide, not evil, just knowingly. Like he was in on something, IWASN single quotes T. Then he said, "And I swear to God, this is word for word, you're not supposed to be here yet." Then he turned again and kept walking, fading into the tree line. I didn't chase him, couldn't. My legs wouldn't move. I just stood there, every part of me locked in place, like I was held underwater. The forest grew quiet around me. No birds, no wind, just stillness. After maybe 5 minutes, I stumbled back to the road. My cruiser was still idling. My dash cam was blinking red. I played it back when I got home. Footage showed the road, the trees, the bend. But no one ever walked in front of my car, and I never got out, at least, not on the tape. I didn't sleep. That night, couldn't. I kept replaying the dashcam footage, switching between the time stamp and my memory. Over and over again. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. The crunch of the frost under my boots. The smell of pine. The way the cold settled in my lungs. But that tape shows me sitting behind the wheel, eyes wide like I'm in a trance. Like I saw something, but didn't move. At one point, I saw my own head turn slightly, as if following something out of frame. But there's no one there. Next day, I drove back to that stretch of road. I brought my partner, told him I thought I saw someone trespassing, maybe wearing stolen gear. I didn't mention the rest. We combed the woods, found nothing, not even boot prints. I didn't expect to, really, but part of me needed to look, needed to know that I wasn't. Breaking, a few weeks later, I filed a request to review all footage from that cruiser's shift. Call it paranoia, or maybe curiosity. I wanted to know if anything else showed up. Maybe some hint I missed. They told me the footage didn't exist anymore. Some kind of error. That night's file was marked as corrupted and automatically deleted during system sync. Only reason I still have anything is because I copied a small portion of the file to a thumb drive that night, a reflex, before I realized how strange it was. I still have it, haven't watched it in a long time, but I know every frame by heart. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I remember what he said. "You're not supposed to be here yet," and I wonder if there's a version of me, another self, who was meant to walk into those woods that night, meant to vanish. And I wonder if, somehow, I avoided something I was meant to become, or worse, if it's still waiting for me. I never believed in haunted places. Not really. I figured people just projected fear onto things they didn't understand. Old buildings, flickering lights, creaky pipes, they all make your brain play tricks on you when you're exhausted. At 3 a.m. But there's one building I won't enter again. Not even in daylight. We called it Station 9. Technically, it was just an overflow unit, used for training exercises, supply overflow, and old file storage. Decommissioned decades ago, but still wired into our systems. Still accessible by keycard, barely. I was working swing shift at the time, split between 2 precincts. One night, my supervisor asked me to head over to Station 9 to retrieve a few boxes from the old evidence room. Something about a legal request tied to cold cases from the 80s. It was raining, hard, the kind that soaks through your boots in seconds. I remember thinking how dead the place looked, not just empty, but hollow. The keycard reader buzzed, door clicked open, and immediately, the silence hit me. No hum of lights, no power at all, just dark. But the strange part, it wasn't pitch black. There was this odd grey-blue hue, like there was moonlight inside, even though the clouds were thick. Everything was dim, but I could still see just enough to navigate. I clicked on my flashlight and stepped inside. Every step echoed longer than it should have, like the place was bigger on the inside than out. And then I noticed something else. The air, it was too still, like the building had been sealed off from time. No dust, no scent, just sterile and heavy. As I walked down the hall toward the evidence room, I passed a door on the right, solid metal, marked simply Room 6B, Blackout Testing. I didn't think much of it at first, until I passed it again and again and again, no matter where I turned or which hallway I took. I kept ending up back at that door. The first 2 times, I figured I'd just gotten turned around. Station 9 was a maze of identical corridors, sterile white walls, flickering bulbs, no signage. But by the 4th pass, something in my gut told me this wasn't me being lost. It was like the building had shifted, like the halls were folding inward. That door, Room 6B, was the only fixed point. I stood in front of it, trying to recall the building layout. But the more I thought about it, the fuzzier it became. I'd been here before, years ago, for training, but I couldn't remember where anything actually was. I couldn't even remember how I'd come in. Just rain dot, just that first echo, just this door. I tried turning around, retracing my steps. But no matter what I did, the hallway kept curving back. I don't know how long I wandered, 15 minutes, an hour. Eventually, I stopped fighting it. I went back to 6B, and I opened it. It shouldn't have been unlocked. The handle was ice, and when it turned, it made no sound at all. No creak, no scrape, not even the pressure release of old hinges. Inside the room was completely black, not dim, not shadowed, erased. Even my flashlight failed. The beam just disappeared into the void, like it was being swallowed. I took one cautious step in, and immediately felt something shift behind me. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. I turned, expecting to see someone. Nothing. Then the door closed, not slammed, not forced, just shut, softly, intentionally. I ran to it, yanked the handle. It didn't move, and then the lights came on, not in the room, in my head. I was standing in the middle of 6B, staring at rows and rows of chairs, like a briefing room. Only every chair was facing the walls, not the front. And sitting in each one, slumped, frozen, were people in uniform. All of them looked exactly like me. I froze. My brain couldn't process it at first. Every person in that room, all seated, still, backs slightly hunched, looked like me. Same haircut, same jacket, same stitched-on name tag. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My mouth just opened. One of them twitched. Just a little. A jerk of the shoulder, a shift of the head. Then another, then another. Their heads began turning, slowly, mechanically, until they were all staring back at me, blank eyes. Mouths slack, half open. And I swear, one of them whispered, "You were already here." That's when the lights cut again. Total blackness. I don't remember how I got out. 1 second, I was drowning in that dark. The next, I was face down in the gravel. Parking lot behind the station, soaked from the rain and gasping like I'd nearly drowned. My cruiser was still idling, engine cold. It was 4:13 a.m. They said I was gone for 2 hours. I never found that hallway again. Not even the entrance I'd walked in through. Worse. There's no room 6B on any map of Station 9. I checked. I filed a request to pull the original building blueprints. It's not there either, but I saw it, and I still have the body cam footage. I've never shown anyone, because it's just 15 minutes of corrupted static. But buried in that hiss, if you listen real close, is the sound of a chair creaking. Once, then again, every now and then when I can't sleep. I pull that footage up and scrub through it. At exactly 2 hours, 47 minutes and 32 seconds. There's a frame, less than a second, where the static clears. You can see a figure seated in the dark. It's me and he's smiling. But I wasn't smiling when I was in that room. I don't know who or what that version was. All I know is this: I don't do small towns anymore.